Hey everyone, welcome to YG Cards, and today we are starting something new on the channel here, folks. We're gonna start our series of videos, educational series on sports cards, buying, selling, investing. So I don't really know how many videos I will be producing of this, but so far, I've kind of planned this a little bit. I've got a 3-part series as of now. Part 1 will be this video, and we will be looking at listing and selling cards. So that's part 1. Part 2 will focus more on shipping cards, and part 3 probably be the kind of bigger video of the 3 will be focused on buying and investing cards. So I thought this kind of started this educational series as a good way to kind of pass on knowledge and just experiences from, my own side of things around investing and just buying and selling cards. So let's get right into it, folks. Okay, listing and selling cards. If anyone has had any experience, buying a box of cards, they pull a big hit, I guess monetize on that card quickly, they're looking somewhere to sell that card. And so there's certainly different platforms out there to sell cards. eBay is probably the most popular, given that it's the largest user base out of the platforms that I'm aware of, at least. So you definitely get a lot of folks on eBay looking to buy cards. So it is, quite the buyer's market, I guess, but also a great way to, turn over cards quickly. So eBay, Whatnot has kind of surfaced as another popular platform to sell cards. The user base is much smaller than eBay, but that is, a good way to make it more of an enjoyable experience. I know some sellers have like live auctions on there, so you can kind of bid on cards live with other folks also tuned in. And personally, I don't use Whatnot, but that is another platform that could be used. There's a lot of different consignment stores out there. ComC is kind of one of the biggest ones. So you essentially send a lot of your cards. They'll post it for you. They'll sell it for you. They store it, and so you don't actually have any physical inventory yourself. So that's kind of the main benefit there. But on the other hand, you are going to be paying consignment fees, just like you do on eBay when you sell a card. You pay an eBay fee. So consignment fees can certainly range anywhere between 10 and 20%. Selling fees on eBay usually around the 13% mark. Yeah, so that's kind of the trade-off there. There's also other high-end auction sites. I think of Golden, Pristine Auctions. So I know some folks elect to list some of their higher end cards, Michael Jordan rookie cards graded, Wayne Gretzky graded cards. So the benefit of those high end auction sites is that you are targeting a buyer audience that is looking to spend a lot of money on cards, right? You're not selling it on eBay kind of with the masses. You're selling it on a platform where it's targeted to a niche buyer market looking for higher end merchandise. So in my opinion, eBay, Whatnot, ComC, I think those are really good platforms to sell, especially lower end cards, focusing on turnover, but at the expense of reducing profit margins, right? So if you are selling cards quickly, more likely that you are sacrificing a little bit of profit margin there. So you're not maybe optimizing the selling price that you are getting, as opposed to say maybe listing a card at a buy now or best offer and waiting for months on end to get the exact price that you are looking for. That's kind of the trade-off with turnover and profit margins there. With the higher end cards, again, you can list on eBay, but higher end auction sites are good as well. And so I would say those are maybe more focused on, with higher end cards, it is better to focus more on optimizing the profit margin and not worrying about turnover. And, I'll talk about this a little bit more in the buying and investing cards part 3 section, but those are really important things to consider. If you are, selling cards, trying to kind of keep a steady flow of cards in and out of your collection, trying to maintain a certain inventory level, turnover is important. Let's just say if the cards coming into your collection are greater than the cards coming out of your collection, you will only ever see an ever increasing amount of your inventory build up over time, which, depending on what you're buying cards for, maybe that's what you want. But I guess from a seller's perspective, certainly for investments, you do want to keep a steady stream of cards in and out of your collection. So again, I'll talk more about that in part 3. Okay, so there's also a private selling option as well. Instagram, Facebook, I've done many card sales over Instagram. Although you do avoid seller fees from the seller's perspective, as the buyer, there's less protection. So that's something that eBay and all these other platforms offer, is good buyer protection in the event that the seller doesn't sell you the card properly or tries to scam you, eBay has protections in place where the buyer will get a full refund. So that's why a lot of folks use eBay. Private selling on Instagram and Facebook does work. It does help if you are kind of a known reputable seller, but it's a little bit of a chicken before the egg issue, because in order to be a reputable seller, you will have to have a history of many sold cards. So selling cards privately is great, but again, the risks are a little bit higher there. I'd be careful though not to make that strategy very public on eBay, because if eBay sees that you are delisting a lot of cards, making it well known in your messages between potential buyers that you are selling it privately, eBay can actually not only deactivate your account, but they can actually just charge you the 13% selling fee as if you were selling the card already on eBay. When it comes to payment methods, PayPal is very common, or some sort of credit card payment. That's you'll see that on eBay, whatnot, ComC. So as a seller, those are easy methods to accept. If you're selling privately on Instagram or Facebook, e-transfer in Canada or in the US, Zelle or Venmo works as well. If you do want to provide some buyer protection, if you're selling privately on Instagram and Facebook, you can work with the buyer through PayPal. So PayPal does offer buyer protection. The seller will have to pay a small fee. I would actually recommend selecting the friends and family option when selling on PayPal. So only if the buyer agrees, of course, but that'll forfeit a lot of the fees that the seller would otherwise have to pay. If the buyer is not comfortable with that, then just elect to select it as a normal merchandise item, and so the seller will just pay just the standard PayPal fee, which is still much less than the eBay 13% fee. Let's look at listing cards. So when it comes to listing cards, folks, I've seen so many horrendous listings on eBay, and ultimately that just sacrifices the eventual selling price of that card. And it's simply because the individual didn't take good pictures, or the description's really vague, or just something about the listing is not clear. And so it just provides it provides a lot of ambiguity in the listing, and honestly it reduces the confidence and comfortableness that the potential buyer has with bidding on the card. So the card ultimately sells for less. So let's start with taking pictures. In my personal experience, lighting is everything. Make sure you have a well-lit area to take your pictures. I have kind of a setup here with the YG Cards area here. I've got lighting. I've got the cameras is my phone. A nice little background here. I got a blue mat as kind of a good background. So it's simple. Good lighting. Make sure the card's clear. It's centered, and the photography is clear. You don't want a blurry picture. And you don't need to go overboard either with how many pictures. A simple picture of the card front and of the card back. That's all that's really needed. And if you want to showcase some of the details of the card, maybe it's a patch card or there's some numbering, feel free to take a close-up picture of that. So the next thing is to clear, concise description and condition of the card. I see some folks on eBay essentially writing a autobiography or an encyclopedia around the card description. It doesn't need to be complicated, folks. So for this card, for example, I would just say, for sale is a Trevor Zegras Young Guns card from 2021-2002 Upper Deck Series 1. That's it. Simple as that. You don't need to go into grave detail around what's his eye color and what's the edge condition like. It's pretty standard card. There's nothing to go into detail here. Now, if this card had a very, very obvious defect, I would say, folks, just mention it, just call it out. The last thing you want is a buyer receiving their card, noticing the defect, and then contacting you, complaining on eBay that, hey, you never mentioned this defect on the card, and then requesting a refund. So no one wins in that situation. So again, just be clear, be concise. You don't have to get into grave detail. I would recommend never list your card as perfect condition. That's a very arbitrary description in the first place. That's ambiguous. What does perfect mean? Perfect to me might mean something completely different than what perfect means to you. So just say, the condition is used. It's true. You pulled the card out of the pack. The condition is used. And again, simple description, and that's all you need to do. You can set it as an auction or buy now. My recommendation, folks, if you're looking for quick turnover, whether it's for a lower end card or higher end card, just do an auction. You may not get the price that you ideally want. If you want $50 for your card, auction you might get $45. If you are doing a buy now, I would recommend offering the best offer option. I know when I'm looking through eBay and I'm looking for cards to buy, when I see a card that offers the best offer option, it is more appealing to me. Some of those higher end cards, maybe a rookie patch auto from the Cop, or I don't know. This card here, for example, is Patrick Kane Ultimate Access card jersey auto. It's a bit of a niche card. I don't know how many buyers out there are looking for ultimate jersey auto cards of Kane, so maybe this one will probably sit for a while, but I could do a buy now best offer and sell it in maybe the course of a couple months. whereas this card I could list it as a 5-day auction, it'd sell it right away. Duration of listings, personally folks, I mean for auction, I think 5 to 7 days is a perfect amount of time for enough people on eBay to see your listing and to bid on it. I mean, if someone's looking for a Trevor Zegras Young Guns, they'll find your card. If not, then they're not going to see it. When to list cards. So again, this is something that I've seen work for and against folks so many times on eBay when you're trying to list a card or sell a product. The best time to list cards is in the evenings. I'd say between 7 p.m. Pacific time. You know, maybe you could even do a bit earlier, 6 p.m. Pacific time, because then you're talking, you know, 8 p.m. Central time or 9 p.m. Eastern time. Don't list them early in the day or middle of the day because people are working and they're not looking at eBay. Don't list them in the middle of the night, which is such a silly time to have an auction end, because guess what? No one's looking at your ad and everyone's sleeping. And so the auction will end and the person who wins the card will probably get it for a steal of a price. Okay, so finally, I'm gonna go over risks associated with selling. So again, we don't live in a perfect world, stuff happens, and it just is what it is. So risk associated with selling is shipping. Buyers will claim that a card was not received, and especially for these lower end cards, you're not including tracking. You have no idea of whether a claim like that is actually truthful or not. If a buyer claims that the card was not received, I have to believe them. And so that's a big risk, and it happens every now and then, and it is what it is, unfortunately, and especially with cross-border shipping from Canada to the US or vice versa. So no payment, that's also a risk. So I've had instances where buyers will bid up my card and then simply not pay, or just someone will win the auction and does not pay. I've had buyers open cases for, I think, what are unjustified reasons. Folks, at the end of the day, transparency is everything, and if folks are messaging you about a card, just be very clear and transparent. There's no need to open cases with sellers. Even if you didn't receive a card, I mean, always message the person first. I mean, just if you can't work something out between messaging, then open a case. It's as simple as that, folks. Sometimes it just might be a small error on the seller or buyer's part. All it requires is a message back and forth that usually just clears up any confusion or ambiguity between the seller and buyer. It's simple as that, folks. There's no reason to sporadically open a case on eBay for an unjustified reason. And finally, I'll conclude this part 1 with just saying that reputation is everything. And that's both from the seller and buyer side of things, but mostly from the seller side of things. Again, be transparent, be clear, be concise. Reputation is everything, folks. It takes a long time to build, but only an instant to destroy. Just be very clear with what you're selling. Here's what I have. If there's a defect that's clearly noticeable, point it out. If it's clearly noticeable to you, it's going to be clearly noticeable to the buyer. Okay, I hope you all enjoyed that part 1 of our part 3 educational series. So part 2 will cover shipping cards. So stay tuned for that, folks. So yeah, I hope you all enjoyed that video and got some value out of that, and stay tuned for more videos to come.